You won't believe what happened when a man got treated like a trespasser on land he'd owned for 15 years. It started on a warm afternoon in Lakeway, Texas. You know the kind. The sun dancing off the lake, the air just right for a barbecue, not drama. Calvin Rawdon had his camera on one shoulder, his realtor on the other, and a solid plan to sell the home he'd poured his soul into. What he didn't have? Any idea he'd soon be facing down sheriff's deputies in his own yard. The SUV kicked up dust as it rolled up his driveway. Calvin blinked, confused, thinking they had the wrong address. But no, two deputies stepped out, hands hovering near their belts, scanning the scene like Calvin and his realtor were suspicious strangers. "Afternoon, sir," one deputy said. "We got a call about some unusual activity on this property." Calvin straightened, a frown creeping in. "This is my property. We're listing it. What's suspicious about that?" His realtor, Samantha, was clutching her paperwork tighter than ever. "We're just here for real estate photos," she added, trying to sound calm. "Mind showing me some ID, sir?" the deputy asked. Calvin complied, fighting back the sting of having to prove he belonged where he had spent the last decade and a half building his dream. As the officers ran his license, he looked across the cul-de-sac. There she was, Patricia Norwell, arms crossed, peeking through her hedge. He didn't need confirmation. He already knew who made the call. Patricia was the self-appointed ruler of their HOA, a woman who treated neighborhood rules like commandments etched in stone. Complaints were her love language. Grass too long. She'd bring a tape measure. Kayak left out overnight. Expect a written warning. But this time, she didn't just leave a note. She called in the law. Because Calvin had dared to prepare his property for sale. "Everything checks out," one deputy finally said, voice less stern now. "Sorry for the trouble. Just following protocol." Calvin smiled barely. "Sure, I get it." But he didn't. Not really. Because deep down, it burned. Being treated like he didn't belong on land he'd mowed, painted, and repaired for 15 years. It wasn't about the ID. It was about the power she thought she had over him. After they left, the dust lingered in the air. Patricia had already retreated into her home, blinds drawn. Samantha turned to him. "She's not going to stop, is she?" Calvin shook his head. "No, but neither am I." That night, he sat on his porch, staring across the lake. His ranch had once been a dream, a promise he'd made to himself as a kid, growing up in a cramped rental with a hard-working single mom. He bought this place to feel free, peaceful. Now Patricia had turned that dream into a battleground. It wasn't about property lines anymore, it was about respect. Patricia saw herself as the neighborhood sheriff, always sniffing for rule breakers. But Calvin wasn't careless. He kept his lawn trimmed, deck painted, and trash bins stored exactly where the bylaws said they should be. He played by the rules, but she didn't care. To her, it was about dominance. When Calvin walked the perimeter of his land the next evening, it felt different. The oak trees swayed like usual. The lake lapped quietly, but the mood was off. He muttered to himself, "She's not getting the last word." Weeks passed. The deputy's visit became the story of the month. Neighbors whispered, some quietly cheering him on, others tiptoeing away to avoid Patricia's wrath. Calvin wasn't angry anymore. He was focused, watching, waiting. That's when fate handed him the perfect opening. Patricia put one of her lots up for sale. A narrow sliver of land, right on the lake. A private dock sat on it. The same one she used to wave her wine glass from, like a queen, surveying her domain. Calvin's eyes narrowed the second he saw the listing. It was her prized access to the water. He called Samantha. "I want it, but not under my name. Use the holding company." She paused. "You're serious. Dead serious." A week later, the papers were signed. Calvin officially owned Patricia's lakefront lot. The dock she'd bragged about at HOA meetings, his. She didn't know yet, but she would. The day she found out, she stormed down the street, binder in hand, eyes wide with rage. "Was it you? Did you buy my lot?" Calvin didn't flinch. "Afternoon, Patricia. Lovely day. Don't play dumb. You bought it to spite me." "I bought land you put up for sale. That's not spite. That's just good timing." She sputtered, waving her binder like it could erase the deed. "I'll bring this to the board. You can't take my dock. It's not your dock anymore." She turned and walked away, seething. But it wasn't just anger. It was defeat. For the first time, she realized she wasn't the only one who could play power games. At the next HOA meeting, she tried to paint Calvin as a schemer. She stood up, accused him of deception, manipulation. But the room wasn't buying it. Victor, one of the older residents, spoke up. "You called the cops on him for taking photos. He followed the rules. You didn't." Judy, another neighbor, added, "Honestly, you had it coming." The board ruled the sale was legal. No action could be taken. Afterward, Calvin walked out quietly. Victor clapped him on the back. "You didn't just win. You showed her she's not untouchable." Still, Calvin didn't celebrate. He knew Patricia wasn't done. She started hosting community circles, little gatherings where she spun tales of betrayal and injustice. But the tide was turning. Neighbors who once feared her were tired of the complaints, the control, the stress. Some started siding with Calvin. Judy brought him dinner. A young couple thanked him for standing up. Even the silence from others, neighbors who used to avoid eye contact, started to crack. People were realizing something big. Respect matters more than rules. Travis, Calvin's nephew, stopped by one night. "Uncle Cal, you basically turned this place into a chessboard. You and Patricia are the queens. What's the end game?" Calvin stared out at the lake. "It's not about winning. It's about dignity." Eventually, the ranch went up for sale. But now, it was on Calvin's terms. He wasn't running. He wasn't defeated. He was closing a chapter with his head high. The moral? Simple. People like Patricia thrive on control. But the moment someone stands firm, sets a boundary, and plays the long game, that control falls apart. Calvin didn't yell. He didn't argue. He made a quiet move and let it speak volumes. So if someone ever tries to treat you like a guest in your own space, remember this. Patience is power. And respect, that's not something you ask for. It's something you claim. Thanks for listening. If this story stuck with you, and you want more real stories about standing your ground and protecting what matters, subscribe. Because this was just one man's story, but it might as well be yours too.